Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here. Welcome to a brand new In the Shop. We have a good one for you today. And in today's shop, we're going to be talking about a forgotten rig. A rig that doesn't get any play or any conversation anymore at all. And in today's shop, we're talking about the Mojo Rig, aka PD rig, aka split shotting. If you're watching this video and you're an older guy, you may have remembered some of these terms: Mojo rig, PD rig, split shot rig. If you live out west, you might be familiar with some of those terms. But for a lot of you watching this right now, you're saying, what the heck is a Mojo rig? What does that mean? In its simplest form, a Mojo rig is a finesse version of a Carolina rig. A finesse Carolina rig. And there are scenarios where that traditional big weight of a Carolina rig thrown on a bait caster, big lure, they don't work. It's too overpowering. So a Mojo rig, also called a PD rig, also called a split shot rig, is basically a finesse Carolina rig. Now, if you're familiar with the Carolina rig, you know the situations where it's really good. And the Mojo rig, this finesse version, is good in the same scenarios. So let me talk about that real quick. Mojo rig is great when you have to cover a lot of water. You're going to see in a second with the setup and how we're going to fish it, that you can really move the bait and cover the water column, right? You can cover a lot of water quicker than you can, say, a drop shot or a shaky head or a finesse, something more slow and finesse. This is a finesse technique, but you can cover a lot of water. So the Mojo rig, like a Carolina rig, is great for covering water. The second scenario, it's great when you're fishing horizontal structure, okay? Let me flush this one out for you. This is one you want to throw when your bottom contour is very horizontal, right? When you have a bottom contour that's got a sharp break, really deep break line, steep contour drop, like this, or a bluff bank, this rig is no good. But when you're fishing that slow taper, right? A horizontal bank, a horizontal bottom that slowly eases off into deeper water. That's where this thing is great, right? So slowly tapering main points, slowly tapering secondary points, expansive flats. This is a great rig to throw, the Mojo rig, just like Carolina rig. All right, the last one I'm going to throw at you, and this is a little timely because of where we're at in the season. It's a great alternative when you're fishing deep beds, deep spawning fish. And you're going to see why as we start to flush out the rig. A Mojo is great for when fish are bedding deep. And when I'm saying bedding deep, a lot of fish in a lot of places spawn 8, 10, 12, even deeper, right? And remember, the clearer the water, the deeper those fish can spawn because it's about light penetration. So when you can't actively see them, but you think they're spawning deep, Mojo rig is perfect. Okay, so a lot of great scenarios, like a Carolina rig, but more finesse. All right, let's look at it. Okay, we're going to show you how to rig it. We're going to show you the components. We'll talk about the rod and the reel. And then last but not least, we're going to show you how to fish it. And it's super easy how to fish it, okay? So a Mojo rig, let me let a little line up for you real quick. A Mojo rig, like a Carolina rig, has a sliding weight, a bead, and a barrel swivel, okay? Just like a Carolina rig, sliding weight, bead, and barrel swivel. But remember, this is a Mojo rig. So everything's going to be scaled down, right? This is Mojo's system, is a Finesse Carolina rig system. So let's start with the weight. You could use any sliding weight you want. Regular worm weight works great. Egg sinker works great. But man, oh man, I'm telling you, this is the best weight to use for a Mojo rig. And it's a slider weight that really elongated, long cylinder style weight, a slider weight. This one's by VMC. And I love this because it's also tungsten. And I like tungsten on my Mojo because it's smaller, but harder. And that means more sensitivity when I'm fishing it. And we'll talk about that as we look how to work the bait. But remember, everything's smaller, okay? So on the low end, from a 1/16 or an 1/8 ounce, all the way up to, on the heavy end, a 5/16 or a 3/8. 3/8 at the heaviest. But without a doubt, an 1/8, a 3/16 and a 1/4 are my favorite sizes. I really think that 3/16 and that 1/4 for me get more use than any other weight. So any weight but the sliding tungsten weight for sure. A bead. And that bead is going to be a separator from the weight to that knot. We want to protect that knot. And it's also going to add sound. But remember, on that bead, a much smaller bead. So on a regular Carolina rig, we're probably using a 4 or a 6 millimeter bead. But on the Finesse Carolina rig, something small, right? An 8, a 10, a 12 millimeter bead, just something small. The other thing, when you use that bead, if you're using tungsten, make sure that bead is plastic, not glass. Tungsten's so hard, it's going to shatter the glass. We don't want that. So I'll just show you why that bead's important. Look, it protects that knot. It's a separator so that very hard tungsten isn't hitting that knot. We don't want that. But it also makes a sound. Listen. You can hear that little, okay? That's going to help draw the fish in. Last but not least is a barrel swivel. A really good ball bearing barrel swivel. This one's by VMC. This is a rolling swivel, stainless steel. And that barrel swivel is going to be the connection piece between your main line and your leader. And we're going to talk about that line in a second. Same thing. This is a Mojo. It's not a Carolina rig. So we want smaller swivel. Normal Carolina rig, you're using, a bigger barrel swivel. When you get to your Mojo, use a smaller one. Okay, so 2 or 3 sizes smaller than what you use on a bait casting Carolina rig. All right. Weight, bead, swivel, our leader, okay? We're going to go to a fluorocarbon leader. While I'm here, let me talk about it. When I'm Mojo rigging, this is a spinning rod technique. We're going to look at the rod and reel in a second. I prefer braided line, super line, to a fluorocarbon leader. And remember that barrel swivel is going to be my connector of the 2 lines. So if you're watching this and you have a hard time tying braid to fluoro, this is the technique that's good for you. I generally like that 10 to 15 pound braided line. Anything in that range. This is a Berkley X5, just white. I like a line color that I can see when I'm dragging it. And we'll talk about that in a second. So 10 to 15 pound braid. Then I'm gone to, an 8 to 12 pound fluorocarbon leader behind that, right? 10 pound, great line size. 8 pounds, really good if there's not a lot of cover. You can even go down to 6 if the fish are super finicky. So this leader length is really dependent on what water you're fishing. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I'll give you the real easy lesson for leader length on your Mojo rig. Dirty water and heavy cover, we're going to use a really short Mojo leader. Let's call it 8 to 10 or 12 inches. That's it. Dirty water, heavy cover, short Mojo leader. But cleaner water, clear water, ultra clear water, and fishing where there's less cover. And a lot of times on this Mojo rig, remember, horizontal bottom, flat points, flats. A lot of times there's less cover. Scattered grass, a couple sticks here and there, rocks, scattered rocks. When there's less cover and cleaner water, longer leader, okay? Look at that one, that's 3 feet. So now I'm gonna tell you, let's talk about 18 inches, 24 inches, 36 inches, longer leader, okay? Fluorocarbon leader. Last but not least, let's get to our hook. And just like everything we've talked about with this Mojo rig, our hook is going to be smaller than a normal Carolina rig. So I like 2 style hooks. A regular round bend, that's a VMC red line. That's a 2-aught, a regular round bend hook. Or the Finesse Neko hook is another good one. But again, remember, guys, Mojo rig, not a Carolina rig, smaller hook. So number 1, 1-aught, 2-aught. 1 and 2-aught are my favorite sizes. 3-aught is as big as I would go, but the 1 or the 2-aught is really the deal. And you don't want that hook to overpower the bait. And we're going to see why in a second. All right, talked about the line, the weight, the barrel, the bead, the swivel, the hook. Let's talk about the bait. Just like everything we're talking about with this Mojo, more finesse, we don't want a big giant piece of plastic on the back. We want a smaller piece of plastic. Instead of your 8 and 10 inch worms, instead of your 6 to 8 inch lizards or creatures, we don't want that. That's a Carolina rig. We want a smaller piece of plastic. We want a 3 to 5 inch piece of plastic. I love these 4-inch baits. And here are 2 of my favorites. And there's something similar to both of them. I want to show you. I love the French fry style lures. This one's 4-inch on the button. This is a lugworm or a power noodle, some guys call them. So French fry style lures. Or, and this is simply one of the best baits ever for a Mojo rig, finesse worm, right? This is a bottom hopper. It's 4.75. Okay, so smaller plastic. But here's the deal. You ready? Both of these lures have a flat bottom. A flat bottom. I want you to pick a smaller plastic for this Mojo rig that has that flat bottom to it. And when we rig this Texas style on that smaller hook, we always want that flat bottom facing down. And you're going to see in a second here when I talk about this technique of fishing it, when that happens, this bait gliding down, right? It's got that flat bottom. Think about like a sled, or think about like water skis, right? Flat. And it's the same concept. So as this thing comes into water, it's not nose diving. It's not falling. It's gliding behind that weight, falling real slow to the bottom, helpless, almost like a weightless presentation, but with a weight. That's why it's so good for those deep bedders, okay? So small plastic, flat bottom, and most of the time, all I'm going to do is just Texas rig it on that small hook, right? So here's the power noodle, the lugworm. I'm just Texas rigging it. If it's real heavy cover, I'll bury the point. If it's open water, I'll actually Texpose it. I'll leave that point exposed if there's no cover. But just a regular Texas rig. Remember, flat side down, okay? All right, let's get into the rod and reel, and then we'll talk about the nitty gritty of how to fish it, and that's so easy. I can't wait to get to that. So, here's the thing. This is a finesse technique, but you've got a lot of stuff going on here, right? Like a Carolina rig, you've got a weight, a bead, a barrel swivel, braid to floor leader. You got this long floor leader in clear water. Because of that, you need a longer spinning rod. you need a longer spinning rod. This one's long. This is one that I make for Abu Garcia. And this is a 7.6 medium heavy. Okay? So let's call it 7.4 to 8 foot rod, spinning rod is what you want. Now listen, they're harder to find, but companies like Abu Garcia, like this one I make, they make these longer spinning rods. So a 7.6 medium heavy is the rod I use. And then I just want to make sure I use a bigger spinning reel because there's going to be a lot of long casts with this. So instead of the size 10 or 20, don't use those smaller spinning reels. Use the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. In some manufacturers, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Use the bigger size reels, okay? All right, so there's your setup. There's your Carolina rig setup. Now let's get into how to fish this. And this is going to be the easiest part of this whole video. And it's really, honestly, what makes this Mojo rigging so good. So good. So, you know, we're really going to make, and remember, we're fishing a lot of flat horizontal bottom with that. And we're trying to cover a lot of water. So because of that, when I make that cast, I'm going to make a really long cast. Because this rod's long, you're going to be able to bomb this thing out there. And we're going to fish it a lot like a Carolina rig, but maybe just a hair bit slower, right? And that's easy. So we're going to make that long cast out in that horizontal water. We're going to let that Mojo weight get all the way to the bottom. Boom. As soon as that Mojo weight hits the bottom, this is how easy it is, guys. I'm basically going to go from 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock. I'm going to slow drag. But instead of going straight in front of you, right? Instead of going 3 to 12 directly in front of your body, go 3 to 12 on an angle. Go like to the side of your body. It's going to help you keep in contact of the bait better. And when the fish bites, you're going to be able to sweep into that fish a little more, okay? If I was jig fishing, I want that rod straight in front of my body. But now I want to go from 3 to 12 to the side. And remember, this is a Mojo, lighter weight. So that drag is going to be slow. Once I hit 12 o'clock behind me, I'm going to reel in my slack, pause for a second, and slow drag it again, 3 to 12. I'm going to do that almost all the way back to the boat, or when I'm in the zone of where I believe the fish are. The only time I'm going to stop that drag is if I think I have a bite or if I hit a piece of cover, okay? So remember, this tungsten weight, dude, it's sensitive. So if you're dragging and this weight's dragging along the bottom and you feel it hit something, a stick, a rock, anything, just a piece of cover, a weed, stop. And remember, flat bottom, 4-inch plastic. When you stop and pause, that bait's just going to glide down, almost like weightless behind that weight, right? And that weight, as you drag it, is kicking up silt. It's kicking up a little debris on the bottom. It's making that noise. And then when you stop and hit a piece of cover and it stops, dude, it just falls helplessly to the fish and he can't stand it. He can't help himself, okay? One last thing on that hook set. I mentioned it, but I want to hit it again. We're going from 3 to 12 to the side. When you feel that bite, I want you to reel down to it and sweep set the hook, okay? So sort of like a Texas rig. I want to let him get it for just a second, and then I'm going to get in them, right? So if I'm dragging and boom, I feel a bite and I'm at about 11 o'clock. I reel down, get back to that 3 o'clock, and I sweep to the side and I set it back, okay? Just like a Carolina rig, if you Carolina rig fish. And remember, you know, this is a single hook on this bait, right? This isn't, this isn't a treble hook. This isn't a little tiny, itsy bitsy trout hook. This is a 1 or a 2-aught hook. So we want to set into it with that side sweep, okay? All right, everybody, there you got it. It's the Mojo rig, aka little PD rig, aka split shot rig, whatever you want to call it. Definitely not talked about, definitely sort of forgotten about. But in situations where you got to get more finesse, horizontal cover, deep beds, this is a great technique. I hope you like this in the shop talking about the Mojo Rig. If you like what you're hearing, do me a favor, stop right now, mash that subscribe button. See it right there? Hit that button, subscribe to my channel. If you're already a subscriber, tell your fishing buddies and friends about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're coming at you with a new piece of content every single week. Hope you enjoyed this one. Give it a try. The Mojo Rig, it's going to help you catch more fish.